Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
I'm Jason Miller. Coming up on tonight's Evan Miller Report. A German woman is killed in the latest in Syria's fighting against the Islamic State. This as Christians are forced to exile from that country, from ISIS. Also tonight, the Palestinians arrest dozens of Hamas members in the West Bank. We have the latest in that situation. This as former U.S. envoy to Prime Minister Netanyahu is now among his rivals. We'll tell you more on that. In Nigeria, soldiers are killed as Boko Haram loses more Nigerian towns. The Swiss firm has sold camouflage nets to sanction-hit Russia. This as the U.S. has deployed 3,000 troops on a major exercise with its NATO allies in the Baltic. I'm Jason Miller. It's Monday, March the 9th, 2015. We have all those stories and more, plus Corey Evans.
Thank you, Jay. I deal with Japanese stabbings, a load of Merkel, and U.S. murder trials in my headlines. A lot of global socialism in there. A little cherub in Utah is fighting for her life in my new stories of survival. General Motors is going on the defensive by buying back stock in business. I wonder if Mary Barra is going to buy the new Apple Watch launching today. It's all about water billing, government payrolls underwater, and expensive airport water in lawsuits across America. This one's going to be all wet. And Harrison Ford is on the mend in entertainment. Coming up in your conservative news source, the Evan Miller Report starts now.
Live from Southern California, this is the Evan Miller Report. Jason Miller with news and politics, Corey Evans with business and entertainment. This is the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. Here now, Jason Miller.
And a very good evening on this Monday, March the 9th, 2015. I'm Jason Miller, along with Corey Evan, and hopefully you guys are getting over the daylight savings time hangover.
Yes, I know. That was quite a humdinger.
Yeah, certainly was. And coming up later on the show tonight, why certain states here in the Southwest are fighting against daylight savings time. We'll have that and more. And in our D.C. news tonight, new news comes in the Hillary Clinton email scandal, as it is found out that President Obama traded email contact with Hillary Clinton's private email accounts. We'll have that and much more on tonight's Evan Miller Report. But first, ladies and gentlemen, we start off internationally tonight over in Syria, where a 19-year-old German woman fighting alongside Kurdish forces against Islamic State was killed over the weekend, according to Kurdish officials and a Turkey-based communist group. Ivana Hoffman was reportedly killed in a village near the town of Tel Tamir in northeastern Syria. Kurdish official Nasir Halim Mansour said she had joined female Kurdish fighting units known as the YPG 2 to 3 months ago, he said. Nafur Karli, a spokesman for the Kurdish PYD party in Europe, confirmed she had died over the weekend. According to the British-based Syrian Observatory for Human Rights, they said she was the third foreigner alongside Kurdish forces to be killed in Syria's 4-year civil war. As you remember, a British RAF soldier was killed last week. And in biblical times, they would have been called the escape of people from Syria an exodus. Entire communities forced to pack up and flee for their lives ahead of the barbarous advance of the so-called Islamic State. It's difficult to ascertain exactly how many have left and what precisely those who have stayed have endured. But Lebanon has already accepted more than 1 million refugees from Syria, perhaps twice that number. No one knows for sure. In a country of 4 million people, that is extraordinary. Imagine 15 million people coming to the UK in 4 years. And I apologize, ladies and gentlemen, because my computer just froze up here in the studio. Well, that is
Glad it's
certainly a shame.
glad it's not just my computer.
Wow. Seem to be having one of those days today, ladies and gentlemen. So we'll get back to this story in a moment. For the moment, I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Corey Evan right now, and he has the latest on a shooting over in Japan this evening. Corey, take it away.
A stabbing in Japan, just for your
pardon, ladies
correction.
and gentlemen.
Not a problem. It's easy to get the two mixed up, but it does prove that gun control doesn't work. According to NBC News, a blood-covered 40-year-old was arrested after 5 people were stabbed to death in western Japan, local media reported on Monday. 1 man and 2 women in the ages of 60 and 80 were found in one house in the town of Sumoto, according to Mainichi Shimbun newspaper. Another elderly couple in their 80s were spotted in another building around 330 feet away, the newspaper added. Local police identified the suspect as Tatsuhiko Hirano. Officials wouldn't disclose any additional information. However, Mainichi Shimbun and other newspapers cited police sources as saying that the suspect and all the victims were related. Stay with us here at the Evan Miller Report. We will bring you any details that arise from this story. Being one of the world's most powerful women comes with a long list of responsibilities, but as International Women's Day draws to a close, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has been called upon to help solve another, get this, Jay, global issue. Alongside another senior female figure in politics, Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, South Africa's Minister of Health, Merkel has been asked by 36 high-profile women to help end female poverty by 2030. These women include celebrities like Beyoncé, Lady Gaga, and Meryl Streep, and businesswomen like Ariana Huffington and Sheryl Sandberg, and are petitioning on behalf of ONE, an anti-poverty group co-founded by pop star Bono. Both Merkel and Dlamini Zuma will chair major international summits in June, and ONE called on the politicians to use these meetings to further the cause of poverty-struck women. In an open letter posted on one.org and addressed directly to Merkel and Dlamini Zuma, the group said, quote, "If your summits reach the right agreements, great financing and momentum around girls' and women's empowerment can be placed at the heart of the new global goals. That in turn will frame how global policies are decided and trillions of dollars spent over the next 15 years. If we get this right, we can help lift every girl and woman out of poverty by 2030. And by doing so, we will lift everyone. Get this wrong, and extreme poverty, inequality, and instability might spread in the most vulnerable regions, impacting all our futures," it later added. Merkel will chair this year's G7 summit on June 7th, while Dlamini Zuma will chair the African Union Summit. The 41st meeting of the G7 countries, the world's 7 richest, will see powerful leaders assemble in Bavaria, Germany, to discuss the world's economy, in addition to development, security, and foreign policies. Both the G7 and the African Union summits come ahead of an important, quote-unquote, UN meeting in July. This meeting is for global policymakers to establish new sustainable development goals. There's another warning for you folks, which will set... Yes, what Jay said. And that will set the agenda in future years for global efforts to support development in poorer countries, they say. Now, I'm one who is all for women getting jobs in the modern day, but I just hope they don't forget to take care of their home responsibilities, their families and whatnot, all that sort of stuff. I'm not putting it all on them because it's the guys and the girls' responsibility when the two get together, but to hear this sort of stuff, I'm thinking they're asking for a lot more than that. Wouldn't you say, Jake?
Oh yeah, certainly right, and I had to watch the LA news yesterday and see it be shoved down our throats how women are treated so badly and how we need more inequality and diversity among women across the
As far as I
States.
can tell, over the past 40 years, there's been a big improvement. The workplace has opened up quite a bit to having women in the workforce. And although I do note some examples of women not getting as much pay as their male counterparts, still say that they are still making progress. So to ask much more than that, at least with the people we have in charge of business and government these days, it's still very touch and go.
It certainly is, and you know what? Sometimes it really has to do with where you are in certain parts of the world. Just we put an example to the people over in the Middle East. It is no fault but their own that they're in the situations that they're in, and then when
Yes,
they ask for help,
if they want, sorry.
then when they ask for our help and we come over to help, they don't like what we do. So then they wish us ill will, death, what have you, and wanting us to stay out of their internal affairs. Such be the
Makes me
example
wonder
of
what the
country of
real.
Iraq.
Oh, yeah, makes me wonder what the real agenda over at Al Jazeera America, Quality Arab Television, and Death to America is.
Jury's still out on that one, Corey. All right, folks, I do thank Corey Evan for covering for me here as we have taken care of the technical difficulties down here in San Diego. One of our main computers that provides audio feeds for certain stories that we play here on the broadcast was giving us some issues, and I believe we have that issue taken care of. So we're going to go ahead and go back to the story here about Christians being forced to flee for their lives from ISIS, and we're going to go ahead and go to the ITV News' Dan Rivers, who's in Lebanon, on this story.
They offer thanks for their safe passage out of Syria in the ancient Aramaic language of Christ. Their ancestors have survived the rise and fall of countless empires for 2,000 years. But now these people have been forced to flee the barbarous advance of the so-called Islamic State. Edward Adam arrived a week ago with his extended family. He tells me they left everything behind. The farm his family had spent 80 years building up is now probably in the hands of the Islamic State. This was the evacuation of their village 10 days ago. An entire community of Assyrian Christians forced to flee for their beliefs.
They burned the houses, they burned the church. We have 220 people, they are kidnapped, hostages, and ISIS. It's massacre.
Georgette got out before Islamic State's slaughter began. She's watched the plight of her fellow Christians with increasing horror. She says, I worked for 30 years, then I lost everything. If God would allow us to return and live in safety, I would do that. My homeland is the most treasured thing in my life.
But it's not just Syria's ancient Christian population which is part of this exodus out of the country. There are many hundreds of thousands of Muslims who've also sought sanctuary in the relative safety of Lebanon's Bekaa Valley.
Camped within sight of Syria's mountains, they remain a long way from returning. Christians and Muslims all facing the same bleak future, the forgotten exiles of nearly 4 years of war. Dan Rivers, ITV News, in the Bekaa Valley.
And many thanks to Dan Rivers for that report. Christians all around the world being threatened by the likes of ISIS, and you see, Corey, what they have to go through day in and day out, leaving their homeland, losing their churches, losing their homes. Quite tragic.
And it doesn't exactly help that now Boko Haram and ISIS have gotten together and have pledged allegiance to one another.
No, it certainly has not. All right, folks, moving on, because we have a lot more news to get to tonight here on the program here. Over to Palestine, the Palestinian security forces in the West Bank have arrested dozens of members of the Islamic movement Hamas on Monday, according to sources on both sides. A Palestinian Authority, which has its headquarters in Ramallah, has regularly detained Hamas members, including MPs, over the past few years. But the ongoing crackdown is a sign of the failure of a nearly year-old unity deal between Hamas, which controls the Gaza Strip, and the Rafah Fatah, which dominates the PA. We received information that 60 members of Hamas were arrested throughout the West Bank. Source from the Hamas headquarters in the territory was asked to remain anonymous. he told AFP without elaborating. An official from the Palestinian Authority security forces, also requesting anonymity, said there are around 40 arrests, but also gave no further details. Meanwhile, a former envoy to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in the United States for more than 4 years, Ambassador Michael Oren, has decided to enter politics. What he has joined is an upstart rival and has begun questioning Netanyahu's handling of relations with the Palestinians. Oren is now a key figure in Kuluna, a new centralist party that may play the decisive role in choosing the next prime minister. While the party is focused largely on bread and butter issues, Oren is the diplomatic point man pushing for bolder efforts to end the West Bank occupation after decades of failed negotiations. In an interview with the AP, the U.S.-born Oren, 59, said the status quo with the Palestinians is unstable and rejected Netanyahu's hardline approach. Although he agrees with Netanyahu that there is no viable Palestinian negotiating partner, the sides cannot agree on terms. He took issue with his former boss's announcement that this week they would not cede territory to make way for a Palestinian state. In the meantime, Oren said Israel has to start creating a two-state reality on the ground by restricting settlement construction to major blocks and East Jerusalem, capture lands Israel expects to keep while improving the living conditions of the Palestinians. You know what? Since when do we have to since the Israelis have to care for the Palestinians? The Palestinians are the ones who showed up there. We didn't bring them in there in the first place.
Certainly makes me wonder what they've got in mind.
And I speak for the Israelis. I'm not speaking us as in a literal sense here in the United States. But, come on, people. Really? We have to listen to the likes of this guy, and I would say shame on Mr. Oren for coming out and joining the opposing party, especially after you decided to work with this guy. If you disagreed with him so vehemently, why did you have to work for him? But we can.
It sounds like a load of me.
Absolutely, and we can ask the same question of the governor of Illinois, Governor Rao, who has had affiliations with the likes of Mayor Emanuel, President Obama's former chief of staff. So, if we really want to call it here in the United States like it is, well, there you go. That's how it is. All right, continuing on to the international news tonight, about 15 soldiers from Chad and Niger have died in fighting to take control of 2 towns in northern Nigeria from Boko Haram. The first gains against the militants in a joint offensive lodged at the weekend, military sources said on Monday. About 30 Nigerian and Chadian soldiers were wounded in the clashes over Maliam Fatso and Damas, a day after thousands of troops crossed the border to seize the areas held by the Sunni Islamic group, whose insurgency has forced Nigeria to delay an election and neighbors to mobilize their armies. A Chadian officer who has asked not to be named said about 10 Chadian soldiers were killed and 20 wounded in fighting for the towns. 2 sources with Nigerian's military told Reuters and ITN 5 of its soldiers were killed in the clashes. Over to Russia now, where supporters of slain Russian opposition politician Boris Nemtsov dismissed suggestions Monday that his shooting could have been motivated by Islamic extremism. 5 men are in custody in connection with the February 27th shooting, and all of them are from the predominantly Muslim region of Chechnya, or other parts of rest of northern Caucasus. Chechnya Niger Ramis Kadyrov has said one of the main suspects, Zero Dohov, could have been motivated by Nemtsov's comments after the attack on a French senatorial publication, Charlie Hebdo, earlier this year. And staying with Russia, the United States has begun to deploy 3,000 troops on a 3-month exercise to reinsure Russia's nervous neighbors in the Baltic, according to military officials today. Operation Atlantic Resolve will see major NATO forces working alongside their allies in Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia, former Soviet republics now members of the Western Alliance. According to Pentagon spokeswoman Colonel Steve Warren, he said vehicles, helicopters, and heavy equipment have begun arriving in the Latvia capital Riga, and that exercises would last up to 90 days. Warren said the deployed unit was a brigade combat team, which was around 3,000 frontline soldiers. According to a U.S. military source speaking on condition of anonymity, the equipment would remain behind in the region after the troops of the 3rd Infantry Division returned to base. Earlier in July, U.S. General John O'Connor told the AFP news agency that the deployment would, quote, demonstrate resolve to President Vladimir Putin and Russia that collectively we can come together. Well, we certainly wish our military boys the best in going over there and fighting in there for NATO. And one more piece of news here on Russia before we wrap up news out of that region. Russia has acquired high-tech camouflage netting from Switzerland for a record 85 million euros. Why this is so interesting? They placed the order before Bern imposed sanctions against Moscow over the current Ukraine conflict, according to reports yesterday. The netting is designed to escape detection by radar and infrared captors. The contract was signed back in August 2014 before Bern decided to mirror EU sanctions against Russia. Swiss economic policy spokesman Fabien Mestif told the ATS news agency confirming press reports. Mestif declined to name either the civilian Russian buyer or the Swiss supplier. The United States and EU applied the first round of sanctions against Moscow for its alleged role in Ukraine in March of 2014, followed by further penalties as the conflict has dragged on. The Swiss supplier shipped the first batch of the camouflage netting worth 54 million Swiss francs, which is about 50.5 million euros or $54.7 million in October 2014, and the rest 2 months later. The Sunday Weekly's Lamy Damici and Solis-Todjong has reported. It was the largest ever sale of Swiss military material to a Russian company. All right, moving over to the UK for our final story out of the international news headlines for the night. BBC Trust Chair and HSBC Non-Executive Director Rana Fairhead has been urged to step down or resign from the corporation over the bank's tax avoidance scandal by the Chair of Public Accounts Committee, Margaret Hodge, in the UK. Ms. Hodge, who was speaking as executives from the bank appeared before MPs to face questions over claims that its Swiss private banking arm helped clients avoid millions of pounds in tax, grilled Ms. Fairhead about her oversight of events. Ms. Hodge said Ms. Fairhead should quit her BBC role or the government should sack her because she had either been incredibly naive or totally incompetent. Ms. Hodge said, quote, I don't think that the record that you have shown for your performance here as the guardian of HSBC gives me the confidence that you should be the guardian of the BBC license fee payers' tax money. You should think about resigning. If not, the government should sack you. End of quote. But Ms. Fairhead insisted that she had been unyielding about any wrongdoing. Ms. Fairhead, who had served on the audit committee of the bank, said they were horrified to find out about the scandal, but said she could only deal with evidence that had been presented. She added, quote, I think that first and foremost the people who are most culpable are those people who evade taxes. All right, folks, it's now time to send it over to Corey Evan. He has some of the day's other news going on, and Corey, not much of U.S. news going on, but you got a lot of global socialism tonight, don't you?
Yes, and actually, I did mention those two stories from Japan and Germany that deal with reasons why global socialism doesn't work. Gripping testimony in the trial about Boston Marathon bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev resumed today when prosecutors called to the witness stand a double amputee whose husband also lost a leg in the attack on April 15th of 2013. Jurors also heard from a doctor and a paramedic who spoke emotionally about the people they could not save. Jessica Kensky, a nurse, entered the courtroom with assistance from a court security officer who pushed her up a wheelchair ramp to the witness stand. She wore a skirt showing the bottom of her two amputated legs. Accompanying her was Rescue, her service dog. Kensky told the jury that on the Monday of the 2013 Boston Marathon, she had the day off and went to the gym with her husband Patrick, and that she had run for the last time with two legs. Later, they went to the finish line where she recalled the sun on her face and feeling happy. Then the first bomb exploded. Dzhokhar Tsarnaev is on trial for 30 charges in connection with the two blasts that killed 3 people and injured more than 260. He's also charged in the death of an MIT police officer days after the bombings. 17 of his counts carry the death penalty. And before we send it to break, I've got one from the Washington Post. Targeting stagnant wages in an otherwise improving economy. As Jay mentioned, I've got some global socialism. President Obama on Monday called on employers, educational institutions, and local governments to develop a homegrown, get this, high-technology workforce that could help drive up higher income employment. The effort aims to attack a stubborn... Yes, I know, right? It aims, they say, to attack a stubborn downside of the current economic recovery and fill a gaping demand for high-tech workers in the U.S. Quote, we've got to keep positioning ourselves for a constantly changing global economy, Obama said, announcing his tech hire initiative at a gathering of the National League of Cities. If we're not producing enough tech workers over time, that's going to threaten our leadership in global innovation, which is the bread and butter of the 21st century economy, end quote. Sorry, I just felt the urge to read it like Obama might. Anyway, Obama has obtained commitments from more than... Thank you very much. He's obtained commitments from more than 300 employers as well as governments in 21 regions of the country to train and hire low-skilled workers for jobs in software development, network admin, and cybersecurity. Under the program, the Obama administration will provide, get this, $100 million in competitive grants to joint initiatives by employers, training institutions, and local government that target workers who don't have easy access to training.
That's that word, ladies and gentlemen. We all know the mother of bad words in global socialism. It starts with G, not A, G. That's grants. That's the bad term, is grants, ladies and gentlemen. Ooh.
Yes, because they'll never recover that, ever. Yeah, the money comes from fees companies pay to the government to hire higher skilled foreign workers under the H-1B visa program. Quote, too many Americans think these jobs are out of their reach, that these jobs are only in places like Silicon Valley, or that they all require an advanced degree in computer science. That's just not the case, said Jeff Zients, director of the White House National Economic Council. Is he a BS artist, Jay?
Oh, you betcha. He's a licensed BS artist, mind you.
Right. Among the communities that have pledged to participate are Louisville, Detroit, Nashville, San Fran, Kansas City, Missouri, that is, and New York City.
New York City.
I know, right? According to the White House, of the 5 million jobs available today, more than 500,000 are in those fields. So we're going to have to see just exactly what kind of prospective employees this new program brings in. But until then, we got to send it to break. Coming up after the break, GM's buying back stocks. I wonder if Miss Barra is going to go out and buy a new Apple Watch afterwards. Nah. I'm underwater in lawsuits across America. At least the LA Department of Water and Power, the feds with their payrolls, and LAX are underwater. And now that Harrison Ford's healing up, maybe he can show Suge Knight what real strength is. That's the joke, Jay. What do you got in DC news?
Thank you very much, Corey. President Obama has levied sanctions on 7 Venezuelan officials. We'll tell you more on that story. And it has been found that President Obama traded emails with former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton's private email account. We have more on that as Clinton avoids the email controversy at a women's event. Also, in the D.C. news tonight, Congressman Gowdy has canceled an appearance at a Beyond Benghazi fundraiser. We'll tell you why he canceled, if he canceled, and why he canceled at all. And in Wisconsin, Governor Walker signs a bill limiting unions. We got all those stories and more on the Evan Miller Report when we return. You're listening to the Evan Miller Report, your conservative news source. We'll be right back.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Is radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Fact news. Fact news.
Radio.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
How you doing? John Grant here. When I'm not slaving over a hot microphone on the 405radio.com Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern, I check out Sean and Clint here at Sackheads Radio. We all appreciate the best political bloggers, writers, and commentators. We either get them on our shows or we make fun of them, as it should be. So check us out live Saturdays at 10 a.m. Eastern or forever on the podcasts on the 405radio.com.
This is Tammy Jackson, inviting you to join me on the Tammy Jackson Show every Tuesday night at 7 p.m. Pacific on the 405radio.com. Put down that remote and tune into the show that covers politics, guns and the Second Amendment, religious liberty, sanctity of life, the military, and more. I host newsworthy guests and work hard to be a conservative radio show that's not like all the others. So save Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Pacific for me, Tammy Jackson, on the 405media.com.
Hello, I'm Paul, a student at Hillsdale College. Here is my professor, Dr. Larry Arnn, on the separation of church and state.
America's founders believed in the separation of church and state, in that the country was not to have an official religion or an official sect. But that did not mean that government was to be hostile to religion, or even indifferent to religion, as many today argue. In fact, America's founding document, the Declaration of Independence, includes both a reference to God as the author of the laws of nature and a confident assertion that human beings are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. Far from being hostile or indifferent to religion, America's founders understood the theology of the Declaration to be an essential part of the education of citizens.
This Constitution Minute was brought to you by Hillsdale College. To join the national conversation on the Constitution, go to constitutionminute.org.
Hi, this is Rooster from Outcry Radio. Catch me here on Blog Talk Radio every Saturday night at 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Or follow my blog.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
It's the closing bell. That can only mean one thing. The business report on the Evan Miller Report on SHR Media. I'm Corey Evan. Jay will be back with a story about southwestern states fighting daylight savings time in a bit. But first, the Dow is up 138 points at 17,995. The Nasdaq up 15 points at 49.42, and the S&P 500 gained 8 points to close at 2079. Good Monday for them. U.S. stocks rose on Monday on the back of billion-dollar M&A deals, while U.S. and Eurozone bond prices rose as the ECB started its bond buying program. Benchmark Brent crude prices fell on concern that the ECB move implied deflationary pressures, while U.S. crude rose on bullish storage data, narrowing the gap between the two benchmarks. Deal news buoyed Wall Street after two consecutive weekly losses, with the S&P 500 ending within 2% of its record high set last week. Simon Property Group bid $14.4 billion for fellow mall operator Macerich Company, and Alcoa Inc. agreed to buy titanium supplier RTI International Metals. On Friday, the index posted its largest daily decline in 2 months. European shares ended lower as investors took profits after recent gains fueled by optimism about the ECB's bond buying program aimed at reviving inflation and economic growth. European and Asian stocks were also pressured by Friday's forecast beating U.S. jobs data, which stoked expectations the Fed would raise interest rates sooner. The data showed wage inflation pressures, however, were muted. Right, on to a story from CNET now. According to CNET, Apple is now offering an Apple Watch warranty up to 3 years with their new Apple Care Plus program. Those considering the newly priced Apple Watch can rejoice. The company's warranty policies are friendlier than usual. A standard purchase of any Apple Watch model includes a free full year of hardware repair and 90 days of complimentary support. As you go up the quality ladder and throw in Apple's new Apple Care Plus warranty, the coverage improves. For instance, for the middle tier stainless steel Apple Watch, which starts at $550, and the cheaper $350 aluminum Apple Watch Sport, complimentary hardware support extends to 2 years with the additional warranty purchase. The company does not detail how much Apple Care Plus will cost. That means while some instances of damage may be remedied free of charge, some more serious instances like broken displays may incur a fee. That's par for the course for Apple, which still charges customers a fee to repair broken iPhone screens, even with Apple Care coverage. Apple finally delved into more detail about its smartwatch Monday at its Spring Forward event in San Fran. Though Apple showed off new features, app partnerships, and an ambitious new medical research software program, everyone's attention became singularly focused on the Apple Watch's price range, with a top-end model going for, get this, Jay, as much as $17 grand.
17 grand? I can buy more gas stations for 17 grand. That's gas station sodas, ladies and gentlemen, not gas stations itself. Gas station soda pop.
I didn't know that actually existed. You're going to have to get me a case of that later. At any rate, with those warranty prices, you'd expect a more fair warranty policy, and Apple appears to have taken that into account when designing Apple Care Plus. There's a list on cnet.com, which I'll send to Jay right now to post up on the Facebook page, which outlines all the various tiers, and if you want to get an Apple Watch, I don't blame you for at least being brave, but I think I'll hold on to my money and get myself an iPad. That way, Jay and I can communicate back and forth on that after the show, and be able to share things a little more easily.
Oh, yeah.
At least...
That would be nice. And it's better that...
At least I'll be able to do that once my income tax comes in.
iWatch, and then they can GPS track you all the time.
Exactly, because that is not something you want to have to worry about every single time you go out for a walk. I mean, what happened to privacy, right?
Yeah, what happened to that ex-girlfriend Marcia wanting to track you down?
Yeah, Marcia. I'm sure Jen would be happy to hear all about her. But at any rate, General Motors has headed off a potentially divisive proxy fight by agreeing to buy back $5 billion in stock by the end of the year. The move announced Monday is part of a deal with Harry Wilson, a former member of the government task force that restructured GM coming out of its 2009 bankruptcy. In exchange, Wilson agreed to withdraw his hostile candidacy for the Detroit automaker's board of directors. Wilson had accused GM of hoarding cash to the detriment of shareholders, and it sought an $8 billion buyback. GM, which had $25.2 billion in cash at the end of last year, now says it will maintain a cash balance of $20 million and aim to keep its investment-grade status. The share repurchase will begin immediately and finish before the end of 2016. Investors appeared to like the announcement. GM shares rose $1.01, or 2.7%, to $37.85 in pre-market trading Monday. Negotiations with Wilson's group had been going on for about 2 weeks and culminated during the weekend, CEO Mary Barra said Monday. She wouldn't say much about the talks or whether Wilson was resistant to a smaller stock buyback than initially demanded. The company also talked with other major shareholders who agreed with GM announced a 20% dividend increase when it released fourth quarter and full year numbers last month, and CFO Chuck Stevens said further returns to shareholders were under consideration for the second half of the year. Combined, the two moves will cost the company $10 billion by the end of 2016. Let's just hope that they don't end up forcing themselves into a second bankruptcy by doing this. At any rate, that's what I've got for you in business. Jay, can you tell us now, why are some southwestern states like Arizona fighting against daylight savings time? I mean, isn't this something that dates back to the days of Benjamin Franklin?
Absolutely. Sure it does, Corey. Thank you very much. Lawmakers in Nevada, New Mexico, Texas, and Utah are trying to pass bills that would allow the states to circumvent daylight savings time laws. Nevada and New Mexico both want to skip, fall back, and stay on daylight savings time year-round. The end result that we're seeking is to have the sun set later during the winter months, as well as not messing up everyone's schedule twice a year, as it often does, said Assemblyman Chris Edwards in a recent hearing. New Mexico State Senator Cliff Perry said the extra daylight hours would help farmers get more work done throughout the day. And Nevada Assemblyman James O'Shershel said that it would save residents on heating and electricity bills. Mr. Edwards also argued that a permanent spring forward will also expand economic opportunities by creating a greater overlap between domestic and European office hours. And I certainly agree with that one right there. No more having to wait 1 extra hour to watch my BBC News or ITV News at 10. Thank you. But those looking in the other direction raise concerns about being on a different schedule than neighbor California. Oh, you figured they bring California into this. Let's continue on with the story. Texas and Utah, by contrast, want to be on a Central Standard Time for the same reason. Nevada and New Mexico want DST. People don't like the seemingly archaic tradition wreaking havoc on their schedules. The proposed bill 150 would set all of Texas, including El Paso, on Central Standard Time. I've heard some parents with young children who think it's a good idea, said Texas Representative Dustin Burrows. He continued to say they don't have the headache and hassle of trying to get their children readjusted to a new schedule twice a year. I haven't heard anything really negative about it. Messing with our biological clocks does seem to have some extreme consequences. It can take up to a week for the body to adjust to the change, and even in the fall, when Americans supposedly gain an hour of sleep, many simply stay awake later instead. The statistically higher rate of illness, car crashes, and workplace injuries during the weeks following each clock change suggests that the extra dose of sunshine does not outweigh the benefit of a good night's sleep. Federal law has allowed states to opt out of DST since 1968, with an exception statute was added to the Uniform Time Act of 1967. Arizona and Hawaii both do not observe DST technically as of right now. None of the proposed laws have passed yet, although similar bills in Colorado, Tennessee, and Nevada have failed to make it to law in the past. New Mexico's bill has passed through the state Senate Public Affairs Committee, and the Senate Judiciary Committee will hear it next. So, Corey Evan, will we here in California end up fighting against this? Well, with the politicians up in Sacramento more concerned about where their next glass of wine is coming from, I don't think we're going to be talking about this anytime soon.
Me either, unfortunately, because even though I like the idea of just staying on daylight savings time full year, at the same time, I have a feeling that they're going to come up with some cockamamie excuse not to even bother fighting to get rid of it up in Sacramento. And I assure you that the boys...
cockamamie proposals.
Yes, and I'm sure that Sacco, Sean, and Clint, when they do their next Sackheads radio show, will tell us all about it.
Absolutely right. All right, folks, it's now time for the continuous battle on global socialism. Here's Corey Evan.
Thank you as always, Jay. And here's what I've got for you. This one, if you're a parent, this one's going to make you sick to your stomach. If it'll work, there we are. According to the AP, an Alabama woman charged with capital murder in the death of her granddaughter forced the girl to run for more than 3 hours carrying sticks and firewood as a punishment for lying, prosecutors said. Joyce Garrard is accused of forcing 9-year-old Savannah Hardin to run until she died as punishment for a lie about eating candy on the school bus. She could be sentenced either to death or life without parole if convicted. Assistant District Attorney Marcus Reed said during opening statements in a standing room only courtroom that jurors would hear from neighbors who say they heard and saw what happened to Savannah the day she died. Defense medical evidence in the case by showing jurors a version of the indictment which mentioned severe dehydration and seizures. However, Bones said Savannah died because of a fatally low sodium level. He said the evidence will show the girl had too much water in her system, not that she was dehydrated. Bone told jurors that prosecutors, quote, have oversold their case to their world. According to prosecutors, neighbors said Garrard yelled at the girl as she ran, forcing her to continue, quote, like some kind of drill sergeant, A neighbor, Chad Jacobs, said he saw the girl running and carrying firewood and sticks over a 2-hour period as he came and went from his home. Jacobs said he wasn't concerned at first, but eventually saw something about it, yeah. Jacobs said he wasn't concerned at first, but eventually saw the girl on all fours on the ground and vomiting, with Gerard pouring water over her. Paramedics arrived within minutes, he said. When paramedics arrived, they found Savannah on the ground, freezing cold to the touch, her clothes and shoes soaking wet, according to witnesses. Savannah wasn't supposed to eat candy because she was on medication for ADHD and had a bladder problem, but she had eaten candy on the school bus the day before she died. Gerard was angry that Savannah ate the candy, quote, but she was more upset about the lie, Reed said. The women then talk about a bladder condition the girl had and a procedure she had related to the condition. As Gerard was talking with a bus driver, the driver then asked, quote, "Is she okay?" Gerard replies, "She might be when I get about 4 more bottles of water in her." Man, forcing her to drink. You can't. I mean, you can lead a camel to water, but you can't force her to drink. Sorry, this one's just got me tongue-tied. I'm sorry.
He's a bit
Your thoughts?
ticked off about the whole thing, isn't he?
Yeah, I would never do something like this to my daughter. I'd just read her a scripture about why she shouldn't lie, like point out an example of what lying can lead to. Like what a politician did, like covering up something with a lie and all the repercussions that way, and eventually force them into surrender that way. You know, do a little mind melding, but never any physical torture. I mean, good grief. There we are. That's my one-liner right there. So, what will it take to fight off Piers Morgan's gun control, in reference to the Japan story? Why does Merkel think women are still considered weak? And how did this bowl of candy get here? Oh wait, that's from Jennifer. Stay tuned for developments in our continuing battle against global socialism. Oh, global socialism. There we are. Forgot the echo. You can tell it's a Monday when I forget the echo.
Yes, it's Monday, and that means Corey Evans second on my Jolly Ranchers. That was our mine!
Yeah, I'll get you some more later.
Alright, folks, on that note, it's time.
And now it's time for lawsuits across America. The cases are real. All rise for the Honorable Corey Evans.
Thank you as always, ladies and gentlemen. Please be seated and come to order. Lawsuits Across America is now in session. First item on the docket, the LA City Attorney's Office filed a lawsuit on Friday accusing a contractor of mismanaging the Department of Water and Power billing system that resulted in inaccurate and inflated bills being sent to numerous customers and leaving others with no bills at all. City Attorney Mike Feuer alleges PricewaterhouseCoopers misrepresented its level of experience in handling such a system, costing the city millions of dollars. Representatives of PwC did not immediately respond to a request for comment on the lawsuit. Feuer contends that the company misled the DWP while bidding for the $70 million city contract by claiming it had a 100% success rate in implementing the billing system and falsely touted its success with a similar system for the Cleveland Water Department. The suit alleges the company's inability to handle the implementation led the DWP unable to bill about 180,000 customers, many for upwards of 1.5 years, costing the utility millions of dollars per month in revenue. Most of the problems have been fixed, said Chief Deputy City Attorney Jim Clark said, but the problems, quote, are so severe and the cover-up has been so extensive, it's been difficult to say today that it's entirely been fixed, end quote. And, of course, I was actually getting this story from some other radio show, and I just happened upon this one. So
the cardinal rule in radio broadcasting, ladies and gentlemen, do not ever tell people you got something from the competition, because then people are going to want to do, Core? Listen to the competition.
That's why I call them some other radio show.
Legally guessing, aren't you?
Exactly. And travelers might rightfully feel that airport stores charging an outrageous $5 a bottle of water is just plain wrong.
It's ludicrous. It's baloney. It doesn't even make any sense. What's in the water?
Been filed by a traveler coalition. Yeah, I know, right? Yeah. Instead, the squabble involves two retailers squaring off at LAX. The New Jersey-based Hudson Group is under contract to run two boutique Kitson stores at LAX. Recently, Kitson filed a lawsuit after Hudson allegedly refused to sell bottled water at a price of $2.55 a liter. Instead, charged a hugely inflated price of nearly $5 a bottle. The fight isn't over the price of bottled water alone. Kitson has been trying to get out of its licensing contract with Hudson for months, if not longer, and both sides are accusing the other of breach of contract. A few weeks ago, according to the LA Times, Kitson accused Hudson of a Candygate scandal, claiming that Hudson put new wrappers with later expiry dates on candy bars, and that it overcharged for the stale chocolate to boot. More recently, Kitson says that it sought to stock shelves at the airport with smart water for $2.55 a liter, but the Hudson Group refused. Hudson, which operates other stores for the airport, charges $4 to $5 for bottled water at LAX. So, ladies and gentlemen, until they can solve their little argument, their little quarrel over the price of a bottle of water, bring your own little plastic bottle. Make sure it's empty, otherwise TSA will not allow you through. And then fill it up at the water fountain and then board the plane.
I was about to say, or just drink a bunch of resource water and then run into the airport bathroom saying, I gotta go now! I gotta go now!
Someone's been watching those pharmaceutical commercials. Wow. You can tell it's Monday when lawsuits across America goes awry. And on that note, I think it's more than time to declare today's suits case dismissed. Goodness gracious, Jay. You pulled that one out of your bottom.
Oh, you inspired me today with all the Jolly Rancher stories.
Yes, not only water, but chocolate, overpriced, and it's all chocolate? How do you get away with that? LA Health Department, can you please inspect those guys? Thank you. Anyway, moving on to entertainment, while we're going off on Hillary Clinton all across the nation, SNL cast member Kate McKinnon got rave reviews for her impression of former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as she delved into the topic. So what does the fake Clinton have to say about her use of personal email address to conduct government business? Quote, those emails are clean as a whistle. This is not how Hillary Clinton goes down, McKinnon's wild-eyed Clinton said, laughing at the idea that the emails would be her undoing. There will be my rise to the top. If I decide to run, who knows, she said, throwing her hands in the air. She offered a peek at her take on mature romance by showing happy anniversary emails to U.S. President Bill Clinton addressed, Dear Sir or Madam. Yeah, I know.
Honestly.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm not sure Bill
ladies
Clinton.
and gentlemen, let me just be brief here in this little segment here, because since it's entertainment and he brought up Hillary Clinton, let's just do this quickly. President Obama slapped saying, wrong story, but this is the right one. President Obama knew that Hillary Rodham Clinton conducted business on a non-government email account while serving as Secretary of State, but only recently learned the details of privately run system she was operating. The White House said on Monday, so the White House is now involved. Wait a minute, should this be what we consider breaking news?
No, it's just the news.
Okay, then back to Corey Evan with entertainment already in progress with Harrison Ford.
Yes, it's been 4 days since Harrison Ford's plane crash in Venice, California, and according to the actor's son, Chef Ben Ford, things are looking good. Late Friday, KTLA reported that the actor was undergoing surgery for a broken pelvis and broken ankle. Photos of a bloody Ford being taken from the crash also surfaced. Wife Callista Flockhart was spotted heading to the hospital on Sunday. Ford's publicist, Ina Tresiokas, has not given an update on Ford's condition since the Thursday crash when she said he was banged up, his injuries were not life-threatening, and that he was expected to make a full recovery, as I expect. On Saturday, Ford's son apparently tweeted that his father was on the mend. Numerous outlets, including ABC News, Access Hollywood, UPI, and the Daily News, report that Ford wrote, quote, "We want to thank you all for your concern. Dad has the best care possible on the men and of strong mind, body, and spirit. That tweet has since been deleted. And at the box office, Chappie took number 1 with $13.3 million, knocking Focus out of focus and into number 2 with $10 million even. And the second best exotic Marigold Hotel opens up at number 3 with $8.5 million. Those are your report for today. Hope to entertain you again tomorrow. Jay's got the DC news.
Thanks, Corey. And due to time, we'll be covering the DC news just briefly tonight. President Obama has slapped sanctions on 7 Venezuelan officials Monday, accusing them of perpetrating human rights violations and public corruption in the socialist governed South American nation. The individuals all come from top echelon of the state security apparatus that was responsible for cracking down on anti-government protests that rocked Venezuela last year and for pursuing charges against leading opponents. Next up, the chairman of a House committee investigating the deadly 2012 attacks in Benghazi, Libya, is canceling an appearance at a GOP fundraiser after learning the event would feature discussion of the Benghazi attacks. A spokesperson for GOP Representative Trey Gowdy of South Carolina said Monday that Gowdy was unaware that the organizers of the March 19th event in Richmond, Virginia, intended to feature or even mention Benghazi. Gowdy has not raised money using Benghazi and will not speak about Benghazi at a fundraising event, said spokesman Jamel Ware. And finally, to wrap up the D.C. news, Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker, a Republican presidential hopeful, signed a bill into law on Monday that stops private sector workers from being required to join a union or pay dues as a condition of employment. The law takes effect immediately, making Wisconsin the 25th state to approve so-called right-to-work law, making the latest victory for Republicans targeting labor unions, following adoption of similar laws in Michigan and Indiana back in 2012. And now we send it over to Corey Evan.
Thank you, as always, Jake. This one from CNN, and it's one out of Utah. One hits home a little bit. Lily wasn't moving on Utah River half a day before, and the baby was still strapped in New York. As Officer Jared Warner dashed with the 18-month-old in his own alive. But she's doing better, doctors said on Sunday. When Warner heard that, the policeman looked close to tears. His voice faltered. Lily's mother, Lynn Jennifer Grosbeck, died in the crash that had landed their car on its roof in the Spanish Fork River. She was 25 years old. Her family has since put up a GoFundMe.com account to raise money for the mother's funeral. It has since surpassed its $8,000 target. I wish the baby well. And I will go ahead and post this full story up on the Facebook page, facebook.com/The Evan Miller Report. And on that very somber note, that is the Evan Miller Report for this Monday, March 9th, 2015. Follow us on facebook.com/the SHR, facebook.com/the Evan Miller Report. I was going to tease the Weekender. I'm sorry. But, of course, I hope you caught this weekend's Weekender, and hopefully Suckhead Sean has it up on the Spreaker account right now for you to listen to. Good night, Jay.
Good night, Corey. Thanks, everybody, for joining us today on this Monday, March the 9th, 2015. Have a great night. The Exceptional Conservative Show is next here on SHR. Have a great night.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.